There can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt. Hopefully, for the last time solo. Wanted to do this podcast. Had to wait till the very last throw, the very last game. It's funny, the Dodgers fans do not want to talk to me until after the game was over. Then Dodgers fans want to talk to me. Anyway, I'm doing one about baseball. Don't do much about baseball. And I always wanted to do this one, and I was going to do it earlier on this summer. Didn't get around to it. And then after what just transpired in the postseason here, I decided to go ahead and just do a sports podcast. You know, a long time ago, I did think Dylan and I were talking about doing a sports podcast every week. I can't remember calling it In the Dugout or whatever, where we were just kind of doing rundowns of our week, our favorite plays, how the teams were doing and whatnot. Never got around to it because my kids were always too little and it took up too much of my time, and I couldn't do it. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about just me being a Mets fan. This is going to be episode 0, I remember, just my walk through what it was like to be a Mets fan. So I'm going to share that one with you today. If you don't know, I'm a Mets fan, big Mets fan, have been a Mets fan for a very long time. When I was a little kid, grew up watching their AA team in Jackson, Mississippi, which is close to where I grew up. It was easy to get tickets. They were cheap, and my dad always got them. It was a cheap, nice way to be entertained. Dad loved baseball. We loved baseball. And I became a Mets fan by just watching the Jackson Mets, who were decent. I can't remember if they ever won any championships in their own little leagues. Maybe they did. I don't remember. But I remember having so much fun. You cheer for the Mets, and that's seriously how I became a fan, because later on we would see Kevin Reynolds, Keith Mitchell, Kevin Elster. Greg Jeffries was the last one I think I saw graduate from there before I left. But a lot of the stars of that time. And then before then, Darryl Strawberry got hurt, had to come down, take a few swings. Mookie Wilson, during spring training, slid into second base, shattered his sunglasses, and it got in his eye or whatever. So while he was healing, he came down and played some games in Jackson, and we got to see him. Dad always went when the big players were there. Gary Carter, the kid, got injured, and all part of his rehab when he was, I can't remember what happened to him, but part of his rehab was to take a few swings at the Jackson Mets Stadium. And I remember that because they did a home commercial with him. He goes, "I'm Gary Carter. Watch me and the Jackson Mets this weekend versus the something." Because, you know, they had him there. They had him do a promo. And, of course, we all went, you know, see Gary Carter. And for some reason, I kind of thought, oh, okay, I knew it was a minor league. But when I kept seeing Major League Baseball players come, I was like, oh, okay, so this is just like what they do to call. I didn't know that AAA existed. I thought this was the minors. There was one minor league team is what I thought when I was a kid. And then there was the majors. And this was all their little training pool where they all went. Because that's kind of how Dad explained it to me. Because I don't think he went into AA, AAA, you know, A-ball, stuff like that with us. But that's what I thought. And I was like, wow, this is so awesome. And so easily became a fan. And, of course, when I really started following it, like Major League Baseball, was in 86. My dad had gotten us baseball cards even. The year before, we gotten a pack of baseball cards. It was the 85 All-Stars. It was like from Kmart or TG&Y or some drugstore, Eckerd's store. It was just a pack of however many stars, 40 stars from Major League Baseball. And every card was a good card. And Dad was telling us who these people were and how good they were. And we're like, wow, these are really cool. And we each got the same pack. I remember me and my brothers did. And we would always look at those cards. And it was just like I said, it was something from a drugstore or little stores, their own little, Kmart cards, all your stars. And because we obsessed about those cards so much, that's when later on my dad would buy us 86 Tops for the Christmas of 86. And that box was awesome. I've talked about that in one of my top 5 Christmas presents I ever got. But before that, one of our Christmas presents, or no, maybe it was beginning of the season, was that pack of cards. And so that 86 season is when we really started watching baseball. Now, Dad always watched the Braves. You can watch them all the time on TBS. And we cheered for Dale Murphy and the powder blue Brave shirts. And they always lost all the time, but Dad still cheered. And, sometimes they win, most times they would lose. And every once in a while, the Mets would come on. And also on WGN, the Cubs were playing. So I could always catch a Mets game if they were playing the Cubs or playing the Braves. And I was such a big fan. And I held my All-Star cards. It probably just had Gary Carter, Keith Hernandez. I don't think Mookie Wilson was in that deck because it only had like 50, 60 stars. I keep adding on to it, but it was a big deck of cards. But either way, though, it only had the two biggest, or maybe it had Strawberry. I'm sure it had Strawberry and Gooden. Maybe that's who it had in it. But either way, I was looking at my cards. And that's when Dad, I was telling Dad I wish I had cards for the rest of the Mets. And I guess that's, and then of course us getting all excited about baseball now, Dad got us those cards. And then of course it really took off. We were really big into baseball. And that's where I was in sports. Sports was my life. And college and high school, I watched games. I never watched TV. So like Friends, all that must-see TV, all those sitcoms of the 90s and whatnot, I never watched them. I never was interested in them. In fact, a lot of the stuff that kids were watching, 90210, stuff like that, no, I didn't care about that. I cared about baseball, in college basketball and college football. Those were the things we kind of grew up on. And so baseball and ESPN Sports Center every morning. I remember Wes and I did a podcast on this, but every morning we would wake up. Me and my brothers would wake up and we'd watch Sports Center and watch it on repeat. That's how we started our morning. Even during school and in the summer, you had to watch Sports Center first. That was our big thing to do, and it was beautiful. We loved sports, so we were big into sports, and that was our cup of tea, so to speak. And anyway, after the Mets won in '86, I was a big fan, obviously, because Kevin Elster, Keith Mitchell, someone else I can't remember, got pulled up from Double-A Jackson, and they made it all the way onto the final roster, the expanded roster for the World Series. And actually, Kevin Elster started in one of the World Series games. And they even said, Kevin Elster began his career this season in Jackson, Mississippi for the Double-A team, and here he is playing. And for me, I was like, okay, I thought there's just one minor league team, right? So I was happy to see my Jackson Mets up in there. And I think Gray Jeffries was around, but he just didn't get called up because he was kind of new. But either way, I was uber excited to see the Mets, play. And of course, such a big fan. And after that 86 season, of course, I didn't know that I was made to suffer for the rest of my life. So after they won the World Series, I just thought that this is what life was going to be like. The Mets were going to win all the time. And I remember telling my brothers, they're now America's team because they beat the Braves and they're the World Series champions. Because TBS would always say, America's team, the Atlanta Braves. And I'd go, well, we beat them and we're the World Series champions, so now we're America's team. And I remember my brothers would get so mad. But I was I remember I had a Mets batting glove and a Mets, one of those plastic kids' helmets, and I wore that for every game. And I was like swinging the bat, I had the little wiffle bat, and I'd swing like all the big stars, and I'd get in the backyard and throw the ball up in the air and swing at it and I had my whole lineup, Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, Howard Johnson, Wally Backman, I'd even be the pitcher sometimes, Jesse Orosco or Ron Darling. I'd pitch like all of them too. I'd be throwing it against the chimney. And the little, the little opening in the chimney where you threw in the more wood in the back or whatever, that was my strike zone. So if I hit it, it was a strike. And I'd try to throw it in there as much as I could to hit strikes in there. And it was only just strikes and balls. So I'd be walking people or striking them out. No one really hit off me ever. So if I walked or run in, I was really bad. But I sometimes did that too because I couldn't hit the strike zone. But either way, I'd come up to bat and everything, and I'd swing like all of them. I'd put on my little helmet and do my Keith Hernandez would always kind of look like he'd kind of tip his helmet a little bit, so I'd always tip it for him. If it was Gary Carter, I'd wear it backwards because he was the catcher. His helmet was on backwards. And I guess I did that for his at bat. But I remember everyone I would just, do my own thing for and swing like them and everything. So they didn't win in 87. In 88, I remember this distinctly. In fact, I just showed a buddy of mine the video of the game because I remember exactly when it was. During, I believe it was Game 3 of the 1988 NLCS, we were playing the Dodgers back in 1988. And we couldn't beat Earl Hershiser. He was a beast, man. And on Game 3, I remember Jay Howell, who was one of the relievers for the Dodgers, was busted by Davey Johnson, the manager for the Mets, for cheating. What he was doing, he had pine tar in his glove. He kept going to his glove and getting pine tar to stick on his hands. Now, he was sneaking it, right? He'd have his back turned, went to his glove, and kept doing it. Davey Johnson later claimed that he saw him doing it during earlier games, but didn't say anything. And this time I was like, yeah, he's definitely got a foreign substance in there. So he stopped the game. He told the ref to check the glove, and they ejected him. Now, Jay Howell says he did nothing wrong. Like, pine tar was fine. Pine tar has never been fine. Pine tar was on the grip of a bat, but if it went too high or there's too much pine tar, they'd throw you out. And you definitely couldn't throw any sticky substance onto the ball back then. And through the years, as pitchers have been doctoring their pitches to get a little cheating edge there, they've been thrown out. So Jay Howell just remains he's innocent, even though he got suspended by Major League Baseball afterwards. And I remember distinctly, it was cold outside, but I stormed off. I was so mad that he was cheating. And I remember exactly where I was in my backyard, looking into the window and back into the den. And I hated the Dodgers. They were nothing but dirty cheaters. And they've been cheating since game one. And they shouldn't have won any of those games. In fact, the Mets should have won them all. And the Mets should be going in later on. Of course, the Dodgers went to the World Series and won it. But in my mind, and still kind of today, the Mets should have won that one. And I felt they got cheated. Well, then 89 was a tough year for me because some of the 86 Mets were getting older and going on. I remember Gary Carter was gone. Mackey Sasser replaced him as catcher. I hated Mackey Sasser. In fact, when the Mets didn't even make the playoffs that year, I blamed Mackey Sasser. That made no sense now, but back then I thought it did. I said, well, it's because we don't have Gary Carter. And then when Keith Hernandez, because when I asked why he went to the Indians, it was later on in the 90s, early 90s, I want to say, and it hurt my feelings that the Mets didn't sign him. I didn't know how baseball worked back then, and I was like, oh wow, I can't believe the Mets didn't sign him. So I would cheer for him, but he was on the Indians, so I never got to see him play, right? Because the only National League teams that played nationwide was Cubs and Braves. You really didn't get Yankees games or anything else like that, or if we did, Dad didn't watch them, and so I never got to see him play, and I'd feel bad that he was in an Indians uniform. Just didn't seem right. He had to be a Met, and I was hoping the Mets would take him back. Again, young guy, didn't know how baseball really worked. But, of course, the 1990 season came. We were abysmal, and it was just terrible. From then on out, suffered through the 90s as the Braves now were the big thing. The Mets were always playing second fiddle to them now, and I just hated it. I hated it. We went to the World Series in the year 2000, I believe, was the Subway Series there. And I was super excited because I thought we had one of, if not the best team in baseball at the time. And I thought, man, excuse me, we're going to win it all. I thought we were going to win it all. This was our year. And they killed us 4-1. 4-1. I mean, just blew us away. I was so embarrassed. I remember exactly where I was for that game, too, because everyone was big on a Subway Series. We had Piazza. We had Benny Abbiani. We had all these pitchers. John Franco was just throwing heat as a reliever. We had all the good pitchers. We had everyone we needed. Bobby Valentine, one of my favorite managers. He and Davey Johnson are my favorites there. He was supposed to lead us all the way, and I believed in him. We were so good. We were so good that year. And we got really just blanked out 4-1. We just got beat like a drum. I was like, oh, and it was to the Yankees, a team that I hate the most. Like that World Series, my two favorite teams were playing, the Mets and whoever's playing the Yankees. That was it. I never thought I'd have my two favorite teams playing at the same time, but that's who it was. Seriously, I would have lost to anyone. Anyone but the Yankees. Then that's what I said. I was like, please, anyone but the Yankees win this. And of course, it was the Yankees to win it. And I hated it. The only comfort was the Yankees didn't win afterwards. And they haven't won, they haven't won since. Of course, they could win this year, and the thought of that just sickens me. But I remember where I was. I was in Baton Rouge watching it with an old roommate of mine, Will, which is Bruce's brother. And I went down because I took the week off to watch this series because I knew we were going to win. And this is back when just about everyone I knew, I just graduated college. Everyone was moving down to Baton Rouge, and I was just hanging out there a lot of my time. And in the early 2000s, I was. And so I went down there. I remember staying at his house. We were watching it, and I was getting so frustrated. And when we lost, I was just, I was so sad. I could not, it was so embarrassing that we lost, the way we lost. It was just a terrible series as a whole. And hated it all. And it really, in my mind, it really wasn't a series for me. It really wasn't a series for me. It was just it's a missed opportunity because I thought the Mets were the best. Well, then little did I know that 15 years would have to go by before I'd get to another series. Now, remember, it already been 14 years since I'd been to a World Series. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, the first time in 14 years. Well, now, Matt, you have to wait 15 more years to come back to a series. And this was against the Royals. Now, this one was in 2015, and this is a great story because we made it into the playoffs, and I remember thinking, well, it doesn't matter. We're going to lose. We're going to lose to the Dodgers. We always lose to the Dodgers. And we ended up beating the Dodgers. And this is back when there was, I think, just one wild card. And we beat the Dodgers. And I was like, oh my gosh, we just won the division series. We're going to the national championship against the Cubs. The Cubs, who had beat us every game of the season, every game. I remember when I told my wife when we won, we were going to the playoffs, she went, what does that mean? I said, I get one more week of baseball. And we beat the Dodgers. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we beat the Dodgers. And she said, what does that mean? I said, it means I got 4 more days of baseball. I said, because the Cubs are going to clean us. They've done it all season long. In fact, someone that I used to work with at my workplace, he is a big Cubs fan. And he'd always rag me. He'd always send me a picture of a broom every time we met up because the Cubs swept us every time. Home or away, they always swept us. Well, then, for the, of course, National League Championship, I came in that morning. There was an actual broom and a Cubs garden gnome, holding the broom. Ha, comma, ha, right? And he'd set that up because he knew that he was going to sweep us, and this was supposed to be the Cubs year. The Cubs were supposed to win the whole way. This is the whole Back to the Future year, and which produced one of my favorite shirts ever, and I regret not getting it because we ended up sweeping the Cubs, which had never happened in Major League Baseball. That a team that had lost every game in the regular season came back and swept them in the postseason. That never happened before. I was shocked. Every time we won, I told my wife, well, I got 4 more games because I thought the Cubs were going to come back. And even when we were 3-0 on the Cubs, I was sure. I was positive. It wasn't me being negative. I just knew when the Cubs kick it in, we're never going to, because I've watched the Mets lose to them consistently. And I was like, this is it. This is it. We got up 3-0. That's nice. It's going to go 7 games, but I know the Cubs are going to win because they're going to click and we're going to die. It's the Mets. And we didn't. And I remember the last out, I could not believe it. I could not believe it because the Royals had already clinched. And I turned to my wife and I said, we're just won the World Series. And she went, well, wait, was this the World Series? I went, no. I said, but we're playing the Royals. And I went, I said, the Royals are not as good as the Dodgers, and they're definitely not as good as the Cubs. I went, I believed it. I was like, we're going to win a World Series. And again, Game 5, we're out 4-1. And the thing is, it was kind of excruciating because a lot of those games that we lost, we were ahead in the 8th inning, and our closer just couldn't keep it together, and we kept losing. And it was painful. It was painful to watch these losses to Kansas City. I have some Kansas City friends who are big Royals fans, and they got good hearty laughs. And in fact, I laughed at them for years because they kept saying, this is our year. For like 10 years. Well, not 10. I guess I didn't know him for 10 years. Well, maybe I did know him for 10. I can't recall. Sounds about right. Maybe I didn't know them for 10 years. They would tell me that the Royals were going to go all the way, and I kept laughing at them. And every year they'd say that. Well, they did, and they won. So kudos to them. I don't hate them because they were always Royals fans. They weren't bandwagon fans that just came in at the last minute when the Royals made the World Series. Of course, the Royals were in the World Series before that, but they always called the Royals winning it all. So they were right that year. The Royals won it all, and I thought to myself, is it going to be another 15 years before I get to this? 14, 15 years. And 10 years, almost 10 years later, I can say, yes, it will be another 14 or 15 years, I believe. Maybe longer. Maybe I saw my only World Series I'll ever see in my lifetime with the Mets. Because this season, if you don't keep up with baseball, it's fine. I'm not going to get technical with baseball terms and terminology. I just want to tell you how I felt. So I've been telling you, I did this dinner theater show. In mid-August or early August, I agreed to it. The Mets were so far out of the playoff contention, it was ridiculous. I mean, 11, 10 games out of the wild card. There was no way. And then through August, they caught up. They're like 7, 8 games back, but I still thought it'll never happen. And then in September, we turned up the heat, and we were getting, every week it seemed we swept the what was it, the Phillies, I think, or got most of our games out of the Phillies, and we started catching up big time then. Because then we were like 4 games out of the wild card. I was like, well, that's interesting. And all of September, we kept chipping away at that. 3 games out, 2 games out, 1 game out. And then by the last few weeks in September, we're in and we're out. We're in, we're out. We're in, we're out. We're just on the bubble. But I still didn't believe it because it's the Mets. They're going to fall apart at the end of the season when they had to win. They had to get a win. They couldn't win. But because other teams lost, it was a 3-way tie. And they had to play an extra game after the season ended. We had to play a doubleheader against the Braves, and if the Braves beat us, they were in. If we beat them, we were in. If we split it, we're both in. But if someone gets dominated, the Diamondbacks are in. So we have to win at least one. And I was thinking, this is where the Mets blow it. This is where we lose. And this is where and the thing is, though, I never would have agreed to this dinner theater if I would have known the Mets were in the playoffs. But anyway, I still didn't believe. And then we came back and won the first game, which was amazing. I thought we were going to lose that one and we were going to lose the second one right after that because it's the Mets. And they won. The day after the season ended, we found out if we were going to be in the playoffs. Now, we're playing the Brewers, who had dominated us all week, all year long. And so I remember I told my wife, I said, well, at least I get to see them play 2 more games. I really thought the Brewers were going to kill us. When we won one, I was surprised. At the game 3, I thought, this is it. Brewers won. And then, of course, Alonso pulls out a big home run. And I'm moving on. I'm shocked the Mets are moving on because I didn't think we could beat the Brewers. I even said so to everyone who I knew, and we taught baseball. And then we were going up against to play the Phillies. And I despise the Phillies. I despise my least favorite National League team is the Phillies. And I was like, I hate that we're going to have to lose to them. We took them to 5 games. By the way, both the Brewers and the Phillies had better records than us, had better pitching, had better hitting than us. And game 5, and we pull it off against the Phillies. I am going nuts. And some of the games are just amazing. Amazing. I have not seen the Mets play like this. We have played like our lives didn't depend on it all season long. And now we're playing like a team. And I remember this clearly because, again, what did I do? I kept going, wow, we'll never beat the Brewers. Wow, we'll never beat the Phillies. And then I thought, hey, we can beat the Dodgers. And I really believe that. And on game 1, and I mean, I'm so bad. I jinx my own team or something, but I'm so bad at when I start feeling comfortable, I should know I'm in trouble. But game 1, I was sitting with a buddy of mine. We were talking about it, and he was like, whoa, Dodgers are really... I said, no. Their superstar is a guy called Shohei Ohtani. He sucks. He's been sucking in the postseason. That's great. Their bats haven't been as good. They struggled against the Padres, a really good team, but on paper, the Dodgers should have been better. But because they struggled, that gave me hope because the Mets have battled better pitching on the Brewers, better pitching on the Phillies. And I was like, okay, Our starters have done a good job. Our hitters are doing a good job. Their stars are not doing well. They're not hitting well in the postseason. They had trouble. They should have dominated the Padres. They didn't. They went all 5 games. And I thought, I think we have it. And I told him, I said, I'm being honest. I said, I think we have a chance. I said, I'll be honest. I was the most negative person for the Phillies. And I said, but I really believe that we can beat them. I said, we've gone against better. And we've pitched against worse. I mean, worse teams to come up because there are certain teams we don't want to. Phillies had just a murder row of sluggers in their lineup. And again, Shohei Ohtani is the best player in baseball, but he has sucked in the postseason. So that gave me hope. And I was thinking, and I mean, the Dodgers have plenty of sluggers, and I did admit it is as equal to the Phillies, even with their bats getting a little quiet. They're equal to the Phillies, but we beat the Phillies. Our pitching beat the Phillies. And everyone kept saying our relievers suck generally, but they said, oh, well, the relievers just need some rest. And we finished early, so we got rest now. We can win. And this just ended now, and I'm so glad it ended. It's like shooting a little puppy in the head because they'd broken a leg, and you didn't want to do it, but you knew they were in pain, but you kept letting them walk on the leg, even though you knew you had to shoot them. And that's what the Mets felt like, because in the games we won, we either barely won or we won by 3-4 runs. When the Dodgers win, they win by 5, 6, 8 runs. I mean, dominate. It looks pathetic, and it looks like my regular season Mets. The Mets that couldn't hit the ball, the Mets that gave up 1 billion runs. We gave up, I believe, and we were counting it, but I think they said it was like 14, 15 walks a game. Walks. We gave 15 bases to the Dodgers for free. I mean, that's insane, that many walks. But we were counting, and we were up to 7. But then we stopped counting, and then the announcer goes, that's 14 walks. And we're like, what the heck? And then they threw another one afterwards. And I was like, have they thrown? And sure enough, they've thrown an average of, I can't remember what they're saying, like 14 walks or something per game. We got even worse. Our bats got even worse. Everything we were just embarrassed. If it was close, if they were close wins, like 7-6, 4-3, we just barely were losing to the Dodgers. I'd be like, well, they tried. The Dodgers just dominated, But no, I mean, we were just getting blown away. It was almost like we didn't deserve to be there, and I'm sure that's what a lot of people were saying, like, oh, the Phillies or the Brewers deserve to be in there, not the Mets. Yeah, obviously not. It looked like the Dodgers were in spring training playing a Double-A team. That's what it looked like. And this is the season I have. And now the funny thing is, after getting to watch finally one game in its entirety, and then if they would have gone to the World Series, I would have gotten to see all those games because now our practices are over. We're at showtime now. Now they're out. I can't watch the World Series. I always watch the World Series. I am not going to watch it. I've decided I'm not. We question it because I always watch the World Series. I always watch it. There was one year during the pandemic that was not really a World Series. I didn't watch it. I was just disgusted with baseball overall. So 2020 was the only year I didn't watch. This year, I don't know. I don't think I will. If my dad is watching it, I'll watch some of it with him. I'll keep up with it, definitely. Probably on my laptop. I will keep up with it. I can't not know the score. But watching it on TV, I can't do it. I cannot do it. My brother hates that the Major League Baseball is so happy. It's Dodgers, Yankees. That's going to get in, lots of viewers, but it's not going to get me as a viewer. I refuse to view it. I'll just keep up with the score online. But I mean, again, the Mets, go figure. I suffer again. I'll see them, and maybe another 5. The good news is, in 5 to 6 years, they'll be back in the World Series, I'm sure. But what can we do to build the team? Nothing. Steve Cohen can't buy anyone. Everyone's contract's up. The only person I kind of care about is Alonso. I kind of hope they keep his contract. But other than that, they can let every single reliever go. I heard a report where someone said they could let everyone go but one of the relievers. And I'm like, no, he sucked too. Let him go. I mean, there's no one really out there for free agency to pick up. We weren't even supposed to be We weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs, okay? So the Mets did fine as is, as expectations were. They definitely exceeded expectations. But Being a Mets fan. And I mean, and you've probably been a fan of a sports team that just sucks all the time. What's it like? You can let me know in the comments below. It can be basketball, baseball, football. What's a team that is just known for being losers that you can't help but cheer for? And maybe next week, I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but next week I'll have I'm hoping to have Wes back. So it won't be me doing this solo again. Hopefully for the last time, this is me doing it solo. And I will see you next time on Princes of the Universe.